All right, welcome everyone to July's first pub meeting. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is being recorded, and the public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of our agenda, and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Pub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with Pub, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted towards people that are made vulnerable through systemic inequities. And this means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. And the way that we do that is we speak up and we speak out. Each person is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we will focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
Hi, my name is Amy Archer-Masters, and I will quickly run through the meeting guidelines. State your name before you speak, and if appropriate, who you're addressing or that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by me, not staff. Please limit chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public testimony, asking for technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and haven't been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by board members. I may lower your hand once you begin speaking, just to maintain the flow of conversation. During public comment periods, the public can raise their hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise and lower your hand. Videos may be turned on when you're speaking if desired. It is not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Public comment is taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with me or raise your hand during that period and you'll be called on. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. As mentioned, the meeting is being recorded. I'll pass it back to you, Robin, for the agenda.
All right, so the business that we'll be working on today, we'll have brief introductions, a couple updates, as well as do an annual review of our governing documents. And if there is any extra time, we will discuss the recent Bureau workforce and professional development presentations, as well as any upcoming priorities. All right, so Amy, how do you want to start this one? Should we put the new people on the spot or should we put the vets first?
Maybe let's start with an old timer, perhaps, just to get the ball rolling, so we don't put new folks on the spot, and then we can popcorn it around to whoever's in the room. Not everybody is here. I know that one of the new members, Mally, she goes by Mally, was unable to attend because she's traveling this week and wasn't able to connect virtually either. So we will have a chance to meet with Mally at an upcoming meeting, but the other two were able to join us. And so most of, or several of the other returning folks are in the room. So I thought it would be a great chance to just meet people, learn a little bit about yourself. And since we had some room on the agenda, that we would just take a chance to get to know each other just a little bit.
Okay, well, I can start it off. Hey, everyone, I'm Robin Castro. My pronouns are she, her. I am the current chair and have been on this board, I think, 3 or 4 years. And I don't have any specific project or policy areas that I want to mention outside of my consistent push to get low-income apartment renters access to financial aid. But I think the biggest thing that I am focused on is making sure that we are, what's the word I'm trying to go for? we have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of plans. I want to make sure that at the end of each year, we have the capacity to say we did this, we got this success on paper, and not just that we have these shared values. And so I want to make sure that we are focusing on outcomes and achievements of the time that we're investing. I could popcorn unless someone else wants to jump in.
You can popcorn to me, Robin. I'll go next if you'd like.
Sounds good.
Hello, everyone. My name's Karen Williams, and she or they pronouns is fine. I am in my second term on the board, and I believe 2 years into my second term. So I think that means I'm starting my 6th year, I think, today. And which has gone really super fast. And particular policy areas of interest, I think I've always had a pretty deep interest in kind of resilience and emergency planning. And I'm a geologist by, academic training way long time ago, but just preparing for the eventual, subduction zone earthquake that we're going to have here in the region, and just the implications for local services and, vital services has always been of interest to me. So I tend to, ask questions about that kind of thing more often than not. And another area, very broadly speaking, that I have quite a passion about is like government transparency generally, and just making sure that governments are doing anything and everything that they can to make their business accessible to the public, understandable to the public, and making and deliberately making space and opportunities for public members to not just engage in, but influence the work and the outcomes of their local government. So those are kind of 2 areas that override many of my other, anyway, I have lots of interest in water and watershed planning and all that kind of thing too. But I think those 2 areas maybe bubble up to the surface a little bit more frequently. Let's see, how about I go to Lorraine? Would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Lorraine Wilson, pub member. I believe I am in my first term. I haven't been told otherwise, nor have I been kicked off. So here I am. Originally from the beautiful Twin Island state of Trinidad and Tobago. Moved here 24 years ago, just about, and been living in the Pacific Northwest ever since. And I have become involved in what's happening on the west side, even though I have lived most of the time on the eastern side of the state since moving here for work in 2016 or 17. Don't hold me. It's not on my resume. So so my interest in joining the pub is because I was a former city employee, and then I left, and then this opportunity came up, and I think I was on a review committee for the river. Oh gosh, my brain is not working. But anyway, I reviewed the grants, and we came and presented to the pub, and I was like, oh, this pub has clout. So let me see what it is I can do there. And my focus is on creating equitable outcome for all. So I will always be asking the question, why, how? I will always be pushing for educating residents and ensuring that they know what they're supposed to do, and not assume that people know, or that the normal means of communication meets everybody. Because there's a lot of assumption that happens in normal communications. You know, even though the city is doing a better job about translating and all those different things, there is more than that is needed. So I'm also, as a former employee, I understand the inner workings and some of the challenges. So you'll always hear me ask questions too about staff and staff well-being, because a well-run city is staffed by employees who are happy. So I will also, I know I have a background in I'm blanking here, in budgets. So I'll also scrutinize the budget document as best as I can, because as I've shared many times, the city's budgeting is very unique and convoluting and not transparent. And someone in the streets in Portland, if you hand them a budget document, they'll not know, they'll just be like confused. So that's a little bit about who I am and what I'm passionate about. Welcome everyone. And I don't have any summer plans or anything yet, but music is always a good thing. So just wanted to say that. So welcome. You all will have fun. Okay. Amy, could you mute me? I'm on my phone and trying to get onto my computer.
I can go next. Hello, I'm Heather. My pronouns are she and they, and I'm in my second year here on the pub. And my main area of interest revolves around urban green infrastructure and climate change mitigation. You know, how rising temperatures may affect the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services and how they are preparing and reacting. As well as what Karen mentioned, government transparency is very important to me. So welcome.
I'm happy to be the first newbie to go. My name is Lauren Rosencrantz. I use she, her pronouns, they are fine also. I'm an environmental scientist. I work in hydropower and I mainly focus on water resources in general. And, you know, in work, I really work to advocate for healthy watersheds within client budgets, of course. And I consider myself, excuse me, an ally to marginalized communities, but having lived here here in Portland for about 3 years now, is looking for a more hands-on approach to become involved in my community and really advocate for equity and or just for equity and access to you know, basic human needs and utilities, especially for people with very demographic and economic backgrounds. So I'm excited to see how everything works. This is my first time on a government board. I've served on some nonprofit boards in the past. So I'm interested to see how this all works and how I can contribute. I just completed my master's degree in natural resource management, and I wrote a project about Bull Run Watershed, and kind of discussed the new filtration facility. So I'm curious to kind of see more about how that affects people's access to utilities and rates and things like that. So I'm eager for it all. I'm hungry for all of it. So thanks for having me.
I can go next. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Chipman. Pronouns are he, him. And I'm very excited to be here. I've also been in Portland about 3 years. I love the city. I'm so grateful to live here every day. And kind of in a similar flow to Lauren, I'm really wrapping up about a 10-year journey in the private sector, built a lot of skills centered around organizational management, which is a mix of like knowledge-based management, program and project management, talent management, how all the pieces fit together. And I'm so excited to leverage all those skills and start to contribute and give back to the city of Portland. So to have the opportunity to do it on this board and specifically to serve our utilities, It's just a really exciting opportunity. A lot of my work and thought has come through how to turn abstract ideas and make them digestible and visual. I've worked with a lot of different platforms in my time, and I think what really draws me the opportunity through the board is in this moment of city administrator and city manager transition to understand at a more ground level how strategy is defined over a longer period of time, how budget is aligned to strategy, how policy is executed through project or program, and then how that progress can be made transparent for the public. So kind of riding the flow of that journey. I do not come with the technical acumen of actual natural resource management like Lauren, but I am so excited to learn and just be present and absorb and contribute and actively listen and be ready to be present with you all. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. I can go next. I'm Joanne Johnson. I'm an ex officio member on the board. I serve on the Water Bureau's Equity and Policy team. So my area of interest is policy. I'm especially interested in how Water Bureau policies and BES policies impact our customers and the residents of Portland and how everybody experiences utilities. I've been on the Portland Utility Board for a year, so going into my second year here. My pronouns are she, her. I think I said that, but just in case. I think that's everything. Thanks, everyone.
I'll go ahead and jump in next. My name is Joe Spot. I'm the other Water Bureau ex officio. I think this is my third go around on pub. So it'll be my 2 years total and my third year. It's been extremely fascinating and educating along the way, especially watching this board grow and evolve over the last couple of years. A little bit about myself. I obviously am a city employee. I am a supervisor for our customer service group with our front-facing customer office or customer service center. And I've been in that position for about a year and a half. And prior to that, I worked out as a service inspector in the field for about 5 years, doing things like site inspections for in case customers have leaks, high usage, low usage, and doing the thing that nobody likes, which is shutting off people for non-payment, but also turning them back on when they pay the bill. So my, I guess, area of expertise in the Water Bureau is customer service based, and my pronouns are he, him. Thank you.
I can jump in. My name is Rosalind Gray, and I am a employee of BES. I'm an ex officio member since November of last year. So I'm coming on 9 months with this board. My day-to-day is stream and wetland restoration design as an engineering supervisor. So my passion is watershed stewardship and resilient system design, working with interdisciplinary teams, taking the long view. BES often says we're in the 100-year business. So really interested in being a part of giving shape to the future and maintaining Portland as a green city on the map. And I'm also really passionate about functional government, and I believe it can be done. So almost my entire career has been in the public sector, with some early years in private consulting. But I've been with the city of Portland for 5 years, and I was with the federal government for 11 years prior. And I had a really excellent experience on a working board called River Restoration Northwest for 4 years. And I'm really motivated, inspired by what boards like this can do. So happy to be here.
Thank you all for that. And since the group is pretty small, does Jack or Farshad or Cecilia want to introduce themselves?
Sure, I'll start. I'm Cecilia Hoon, Finance Director for the Portland Water Bureau.
I can go next. Jack Jaden, she, they pronouns. I'm Senior Policy Advisor to Commissioner Mingus Maps, who was formerly the commissioner assigned to Water Bureau and Environmental Services. And I think also we have, along with Farshad, we also have Brandon Zero from Water Bureau. Nice to meet you all. I was on the panel, so I feel like I know you, Kyle and Lauren. I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better where you can get to know me.
This could also be an opportunity for Amy to introduce themselves.
Sure, I'll go ahead. My name's Amy Archer Masters, and I probably have opportunity to introduce myself to them because I interact with them at least by email, but I provide support to the pub, so you'll interact with me off and on frequently. But I have been supporting the pub since 2019, so about 5 years. And prior to that, I was in a variety of roles with the city, primarily in management roles and budget and human resources. I'll pass it to Brandon or Farshad.
Hey all, I am Farshad Aladadi. I am the Business Services Group Manager at BES. I use he, him pronouns. I am primarily in a role that supports kind of back office and internal business support functions within BES. And I am really happy to be, one of my functions is to be one of the staff liaisons to the pub. So you'll probably hear from me somewhat regularly throughout the year, but I'm also a resource to you all offline if you have any questions about bureau operations. I'm here to help. Welcome, everybody.
Maybe we'll save Brandon's introduction for next time.
And Brandon may not be able to actually speak from where he's connecting from, but he is the public information contact with the Water Bureau. So he does connect frequently with Pub and often is somebody who's a resource to Pub for information. So I'm sure we will see and hear from him periodically over time. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for introducing yourself. I'm excited for us to get closer as we work together and form those personal connections as well as the business ones that we'll have. So I'm excited for the work to come. So let's get started on that. And with that, now is the public comment portion of today's meeting. Amy, has anyone signed up for testimony or submitted written comments?
Not received anything in advance, and I do not believe that there is any public actually in the room today. So I don't think we have any comment today.
All right, so with that, board members, we will review the June 4th and June 20th meeting notes. Does anyone have any edits that they'd like to put on the record?
During the silence while everybody else is pondering, I'll just point out for the new members, since we're in this unusual time where we didn't have a chance to do our orientation prior to your first meeting, that you receive your minutes prior to the meeting. And so we take the opportunity during the meeting to just point out any changes, and then we just accept the meeting notes with any edits during the meeting. And then once they're approved, then we post them publicly so that everybody has access to them.
I have one edit, but I need to find it in the meeting notes quick, so give me another second.
And the other thing to point out too is if they're minor and technical or grammatical fixes, those can always be sent to me outside of meetings as well. If there's content changes, then we would always bring them back to a public meeting to make sure that it's just stated on the record, since it is a public record. We want to make sure that that's done in a meeting.
All right, so I found I missed the last meeting, so I'm really just I just read the meeting notes, so I could be a little bit off. But on page 3 of the June 20th pub notes, the first black bulletin point, I guess, versus sub bulletin point, it talks about Portland Water Bureau demographics and inclusion initiatives. Let's see, I think in that paragraph, I was just a little bit confused. I think it's the second sentence says, he reported that the majority of applicants were male and female, with less than 1% identifying as non-binary or manager. And I just wasn't sure if manager was supposed to be there, if there was supposed to be like a comma, because it just seemed like the sentence was talking about gender identity, and then all of a sudden a title was listed, and so I wasn't sure if that was just by mistake.
Yeah, it was probably 2 different categories, so I'll take a look back at that, make sure that it's corrected to reflect what was stated. Thank you for that.
And then one more thing, in the next bulletin point for workforce demographic changes, I've noticed in recent years a move to capitalize Black as an identity marker. And so I just noticed that at the end of that paragraph, it was lowercase. And so I wasn't sure where the city stands on that, but I have just been seeing Black as an identity marker capitalized.
As well. Thank you.
Any other edits or suggestions before we affirm these meeting notes? All right, seeing no more, the minutes are accepted with the suggested changes. All right, so a couple updates. There is a coordinator position that I believe works alongside Amy. That would be another pub staff that we would work side by side with as we develop our events as well as our written reports. And that position the application is open until July 8th. Looks like we've had some positive responses so far. And we're currently looking for members of the pub, if any of you are interested, to be part of the review and panel for those interviews. You can raise your hand now, or you can just reach out to Amy via email. I see Karen has their hand raised. Go ahead.
Yep, just volunteering to help with the interviews.
Thank you, Karen.
And then the next update that we have is The pub normally has 2 co-chairs, and so I've been the solo chair for a while, but it would be really lovely if anyone has the time available to commit to assisting with the chair role. It's a lot of facilitation. You assist with some of the agenda setting, as well as engage with bureau leadership from time to time for leadership meetings. And so if anyone is interested, I think officially we're trying to seek a second co-chair by January, because that is the end of my first official term as chair. But if anyone is interested in kind of trying like training wheels to see if they really like it, you can always volunteer to be essentially a co-facilitator during the meetings to see if you feel comfortable. You always have me and Amy to rely on to assist you during those awkward moments. I've had a couple myself. I seem to get through them. But yes, there's a lot of people and a lot of work to navigate. And so we are always looking for the second chair position. And that way we can just split the responsibilities and it gives everyone a little bit easier time. Did you want to add anything to that, Amy?
I think the only thing I would add, well, maybe 2 things. One is we'll talk about the governing documents. So if any of you looked at the governing documents, you might notice that usually, I mean, part of the reason I put it particularly on the agenda today is that usually at this first July meeting, we would have given notice of who we're nominating as chair, and be doing that at this first meeting in July. We're not doing that at this first meeting because luckily we still have Robin, who is willing to serve and is continuing through and has been appointed through the end of December, but has been serving as the sole chair for a while, and so has been carrying a little bit extra work for a while. If anybody is interested in learning just a little bit more about what it entails, certainly can reach out, talk to me. I can, or Robin, or others who have served in that role. Karen Williams has been a chair previously for quite a while, and can share a little bit about, what she thought about the role and what she liked and some of the, kind of extra work that it entailed and extra opportunities that it also provided. One of the benefits is when you have 2 people is that they often kind of alternate facilitation, sometimes between meetings, so that they can, kind of take turns meeting by meeting facilitating, sometime in the same meeting. Just if it's a more intense meeting, they kind of take turns facilitating topics, or take turns based on kind of what the topic is. If one is likely to be doing more talking as a participant, then maybe the other one is going to facilitate more, or if there's depending on what the issue is. So there's different opportunities based on kind of your interest levels. They also do have the opportunity to participate, as Robin mentioned, in leadership meetings. You also can participate in those even if you're not formally appointed as a chair. So if you want to try that out before you step into that role, we are trying to schedule a leadership meeting sometime soon. And so if you're considering that role, any pub member who's considering that could also participate in that and see what it's like. It basically is just helping kind of talk about the priorities and doing some scheduling of upcoming meetings and what the priorities are, and talking with bureau leadership and doing some of that planning, so you can see what that looks like and what those conversations entail. So we're available as a resource if you're interested. And the final topic was just voting member appointments take place tomorrow at 10 a.m. So that will be official as of tomorrow.
We're excited to make it official. All right, so with that, let us move to the first item of business, which is at this first meeting of the fiscal year of PUB. We review our governing documents, which are the pub bylaws, as well as our beliefs, values, and anti-racist principles. I believe Amy sent out links to the bylaws and our principles prior to the meeting, so I hope you had a moment to review them. Does anyone have any revisions or updates that we'd like to add to them?
And if you give me a moment, I can bring the full documents up. So you saw an abbreviated version of the values, the beliefs, values, and anti-racist principles we review at the beginning of each meeting. But the more detailed document is available on our website and you received in advance. That was updated and adopted in 2022 and 2023. The bylaws were also amended in 2022. That's when the most significant review was done and they were updated. So I can pull up both documents, and it kind of depends on the scope of discussion and review that you all want. Sometimes it has been in depth, sometimes it has been just more brief review and adoption. So at a minimum, your bylaws require adoption at the beginning of the year of the beliefs, values, and anti-racist principles, but you take the opportunity, or typically take the opportunity to kind of look at both documents and make sure that there aren't any kind of outstanding issues that have come up over the past year that you want to make sure have the opportunity to be addressed. And obviously there are some kind of broader issues with charter change that are going to need to be addressed in code. That isn't something that we're bringing up today because that's kind of a deeper conversation that likely will be happening citywide and a longer conversation over the year. So this is more operational and internal to pub. So let me pull up the actual documents themselves.
As Amy's bringing it up, I'll just offer from the outside of someone coming in to orient themselves to the nature of the pub. I thought the bylaws, the values, and the scope as defined in the website were all very both concise and legible to give a full description of the scope of contribution and services. So it's nothing to change. I just want to say it feels very snug.
And that is good to hear from a first timer. Bob is not here today, but he's one of our current pub members. And so we have we are lucky enough that he was part of the group that originally created, I believe, the scope and bylaws of this group. And so we've got a little bit of history there, which is always good. So we've got the new and we've got people who've been working on the ground for pub for, I think, at least 10 years.
So the first document that I have up is the more in-depth document. So this is the broader document. Sorry, I have other screens. Move that away. That defines your overall purpose. It defines your adoption of your beliefs, values, and anti-racist principles. And then that separate document goes in deeper to those actual beliefs and principles. So that will be the document that then needs to be adopted today. So I'll pull that one up next. It further goes into some definitions, kind of defines what the quorum is. Struggled a little bit with this. We, had some conversations about quorum and whether that needed to change. Luckily, we're moving back up to a full board. And so somehow you all have done a remarkable job of maintaining quorum, even with being down a few members over this past year. So we did very well over the past year, despite all of that. So for the most part, there have not been issues that have been raised. Usually we have had some kind of, I keep a running list of issues. And so in the past, when we did the last review in 2022, that's when we kind of went through and kind of went through the list of issues and addressed all of those. And so I haven't had any new issues that have been on here other than kind of the broader ones that are more charter change and reporting related, that are more code issues. So those are kind of the only things that are on my potential list. Committees, you've continued to do subcommittees and continued to use kind of 3 members and run those using public meeting requirements. So that has continued to work. It does say you shall have 2 co-chairs, which we have not had. We've only filled one of them, but we have been operating with just 1 vacant. You have had some conversations about meetings and purpose and the frequency of meetings and whether you're wanting to have the focus of meetings be different. You know, this kind of requires just meeting at least once monthly. You currently meet twice monthly, so you're currently exceeding what at least the bylaws require. You've talked some about kind of the focus and budget focus and some of that, but I don't know whether you would want to address that in bylaws or just in your practices anyway. And you've been meeting all of your notice requirements. Those the website and minutes have all been meeting your requirements. Public comment. And then talk some about the co-chairs representing the board and opportunity to share personal opinions. And then it defines your annual report and work session. And so any kind of variation from this, you've decided in a public meeting whether you're going to pursue the work session. So if you've decided not to, that has been a formal decision in a meeting. So that has been okay as well. And that's it. I'm not seeing any hands. Is there anything that people want me to go back to or anything that jumped out to people for bylaws? Karen.
I have a couple thoughts. I'm not sure that they would rise to the level of something that we would actually want to put in writing in the bylaws. But let me throw them out there and see if these get any traction. One is around back in the section that you went by, Amy, that was about the co-chairs being able to speak for the board. And I guess, yeah, opinions and communications. And just a couple on more than a couple occasions in this last year, we've had instances where things have happened, shall we say, in between board meetings. And they're not small things. And we have thankfully had on many of those, or at least some of those opportunities, Robin has made herself available to be able to go and speak for the board when we haven't had, an opportunity for the whole board to speak together on a particular topic. So that just made me think about, do we want to say something about, I don't know. I mean, what I'm getting at here is like delegation, or do we want to allow another, would charter allow us even, because I can't think if this is language that might come directly from the charter, but could we have something that would allow, if the chair was not, well, so if we have two co-chairs, that's beautiful, because there's always a backup there, and the co-chairs can confer with each other. But in the case where we don't, or in the case where maybe both co-chairs were for whatever reason unavailable, do we want to allow for, I don't know, staff maybe to be able to speak for the board if the board was, not available, or if the co-chairs weren't available, or, maybe I don't know, designate a kind of a co-chair backup or something like that, just to make us a little bit more maybe nimble and responsive in those unusual but not totally uncommon times where something comes up that we want to make, have some input, and we just don't have time to meet and talk about it first.
So I wonder in that circumstance, so because in this instance, so it says the board can designate to other members, and sometimes the board, if you have the opportunity to meet and delegate, then you can always vote and delegate to staff, and you do that sometimes. So sometimes I have provided testimony. So the issue is the board can't designate if you don't have the opportunity to meet and vote. So how are you designating? Is the chair designating? Is, what's the decision mechanism, right? So that's the question is, is the board giving the chair the power to delegate to somebody to speak on behalf of the board? Is that the question, perhaps? Is that the right mechanism?
Yeah, good question. I mean, you've pointed out language that makes me think, well, we already have, based on that pink highlighted sentence, we already have the power or the authority to be able to have someone else besides co-chair speak on behalf of the board. So maybe it's not necessary to have something written into the bylaws, but it's more just a practice we adopt with we have a full board meeting, and we kind of make up and agree on what this practice will be. Like maybe there's 2 or 3 volunteers and that can be backups if there's something needed in between board meetings. And where am I going with that? Right, that we would just sort of talk it out in a public meeting, like what the practice would be, and then we could vote on it, and it would be really clear, so it wouldn't be a surprise if people different from the chair showed up at a city council meeting to testify on something that the board hadn't met formally about. So, anyway, thanks for thanks for listening and thanks for pointing that out. So we're probably covered in the bylaws for that situation. Yeah. So I'll stop rambling about that. The other area that also may not rise to the occasion of putting something in writing in the bylaws, and it might also be a practice, but back up to the top where we say that we review and our anti-racist principles every year. I would like to see us hold ourselves maybe to a little bit higher standard of growth and sort of education, and not just requiring ourselves to review the anti-racist principles, but perhaps require ourselves to be, to have an annual training in implementing anti-racism, or to have something that would perhaps be a bit more active than reviewing and readopting principles, but would require us to kind of go beyond, go beyond that. Again, I'm not quite sure, not being a legal person, if that is something that really belongs in bylaws, or if, again, that's more just a practice that we decide as a full board that we want to hold ourselves to that standard.
I really like that idea, Karen. And I was going to ask Amy, I know that there are like cultural competency trainings as well as anti-racist trainings with the city. Are those held on an annual basis where we could attempt to engage in them annually?
Joanne, go ahead. Are you going to answer the question that Robin just asked, or do you want me to respond to that?
I can. I also have.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so anti-racism training is held all the time. It's held for new employees. It's held in different bureaus for different groups. So the answer to your question is yes, and I don't know exactly how it would work for pub members to access it because it's generally set up for employees. But that's certainly something we could find out. I think what would be helpful is to know more about what kind of training. So there's a lot of trainings that are cultural competence and anti-racism. There's a lot that fits under that umbrella. So something a little more specific might help get us a specific answer. The other thing I would lift up is there are lots of trainings just in Portland for people, community members, for everybody who wants to learn more about how to do anti-racism work in their sphere of influence, like whatever that is. In this case, it's pub. My question for the group in response to your comment, Karen, is, to me, when I've looked at bylaws, they're usually about actions or rules, right? And so my question regarding, how does pub live into and hold ourselves more accountable to anti-racism in the way that we do our work would be like, what's the action that we're trying to get ourselves to do, or what's the rule that we want ourselves to follow? That was it. The question.
And the one thing that I would add to that is the employee specific training, so the general, I forget what it's called now, but I think it's had different forms, but the racial equity or anti-racism or 101 type training that is both for employees and is also available for advisory board members. We do have all board members go through, and so we provide that. And we work with human resources to have to provide that training to all of our board members. I'm not sure because that has changed in recent years, and so I'm not exactly sure how that will look this year. I'll find that out as I work with the most recent board members who are coming on board, and as we coordinate that this summer. So we'll find out what that's going to look like. But there are trainings that are available that are for employees that we can have outside folks come and take through our human resources system. We just have to coordinate a little bit differently. Lauren, go ahead.
Hi. Just chiming in, and again, being a newbie, apologize if this doesn't really make sense, but just from what I was thinking, I appreciate the thought of being more specific, especially when it comes to being anti-racist, right? That in and of itself should mean being active and not necessarily just like accepting, people of different color or just being an ally, but actively breaking down those systems. So I appreciate that thought. And I don't know if this necessarily falls within the bylaws, but I just wanted to make a comment of I used to be with my last consulting firm. I was on an employee resource group specifically around people with disabilities. And one of the things that we strove for was the UK government had this kind of framework for like kind of putting a stamp on certain companies. And it was basically just like different, and they called it disability confidence. So different layers or tiers of being confident in your, integration of people with disabilities. So it was just this kind of tiered system. And so I wonder if maybe that's something that could kind of fit into the bylaws. Is I don't know if something like that exists for anti-racist policies of rather than specific actions, but saying we meet the specific criteria, if that makes sense. And I don't know if something like that exists, but or maybe we create, different tiers of some sort of confidence level or some sort of tier of the making sure that we're at least in meeting some certain criteria, if that makes sense.
Joanne.
That's a cool idea, Lauren. Thanks for sharing that. I did have a thought, and this wouldn't be a bylaw and this wouldn't be a rule. It would be more of a practice we could consider. We could consider trying it out. If we tried it out, we could see how it goes. One of the things I've learned in many anti-racism trainings that I've been part of is asking the question, how does race show up here? Because we know that it always shows up in every interaction, regardless of the races of the people in the room, and especially in a room that's full of white people, like race is in the room. So we could just do something as simple, notice the air quotes here, as asking ourselves when we make a decision or when we have a conversation, how is race showing up here? How is this affecting our perspectives or affecting our decisions? Something we could try out. Thanks.
Well, I'm wondering if some of these ideas too might be concepts that maybe when we look at the beliefs, values, and anti-racist principle document, that maybe there's some component that might fit and incorporate into that has some of that action piece incorporated into it, since that is the piece that we use more consistently to try to hold ourselves accountable, whereas this kind of sets the the requirement that we have this other tool, and then that's the tool that you're using more regularly on the day-to-day basis as you hold your meetings. Kyle.
Yeah, I'm trying to just listen to not to gain a full set of understanding of the tools available or the standard practices for the board, but just from a more of an abstract level. The reference points I have are primarily the work plan tracking that you sent out, Amy, and then also just thinking about the ongoing responsibilities or those that occur in a recurring cadence over the course of a year. And even thinking about work plan tracking, whether that's a focused initiative or a subcommittee formed to tackle a specific issue, just some simple things like introducing what anti-racist principles or checks are you incorporating either at the outset of this initiative or before a decision is rendered, just to offer some kind of structural checkpoints to introduce this thinking for any breakout initiative or recurring point of focus. And that's just more about kind of intake and startup and then execution or delivery. So that's less about bylaws, more just about how initiatives are tracked, which I'm very excited to discover.
This is Robin. Yeah, the conversation that we're having also makes me think that kind of what we're discussing now might be important for an internal work plan, whereas a lot of our annual work plan is us looking at the bureaus, and it might be important to add a couple internal things where we are investing in how we are navigating the work that we do. Yeah.
So should I pull up the beliefs, values, and anti-racist principles document, or is there more that you want to look at in the bylaws document first? So I think these raised good questions.
If there are no objections, let's pull up the our principal document.
Okay, so it starts with the belief statements. And because this is dense, Robin, I'm going to wait until you tell me to scroll.
Well, I just wanted to add, when we reviewed the most, I think it was like early June, we were reviewing responses to like a workplace survey that mentioned that gender bias and sexism was really prevalent, but that it wasn't the main focus of the most recent initiatives, which focused on systemic racism and ableism. And so I was just wondering if we should specifically call out that we are pushing to address gender bias, or if we just see that as included in structural inequities.
I personally think it's implied, but to call it out is just to give it more strength and focus and make it a point of deliberation. So I think either way, but I'm in favor of including it.
I think the challenge with calling something out is then deciding which things you're calling out, right? So, I mean, the city and was intentional with deciding the two things that it was focusing on initially, but obviously that's a decision for the group. Lorraine and then Karen.
Thank you, Amy. As I put my thoughts together, and the new members probably don't know this, but I'm a very direct communicator. So you all will learn me as we move along. So I just want to raise the point that when we are talking about race, centering race, it's for specific issues, and the principles and the concept behind that addresses inequity across the board, right? Because, and I want to say this specifically for myself, that when I hear gender, I am not represented. I want to be very clear about that. Okay? And I was listening on NPR about Ida B. Wells during the suffrage movement, right? When there was the push for women voting, right, suffrage, it was very clear that it didn't include me if I was born in that time, okay? So let us be very careful about who we feel is being excluded or not included, because when I hear gender, it takes me, and I just understood it when I was listening to this story about Ida B. Wells and the suffrage and stuff like that. It never hit me right. And when we have, in this country, when we have spoken about gender, it was to a specific group of people. So we are focusing on inequities. And as we know the data, we don't have to go and look for data anymore because, you know, we all like to go, oh, let's go get more data and more data. The data have shown that race is a main determinant in outcomes. So let us be clear, because if I'm a female and you add my race to that, there's a different outcome for me as opposed to white women or other represented ethnicities. So let's be careful. And I just want to share that understanding about what we're talking about. If we talk about the LGBTQ community, we are talking about inequities. If we add race to it, we know that the outcomes is different to others, right? We're talking about disability. It's an important thing, but when we add race to it, and this is basic conversation, we know these things. So I just, as Amy said, what are we calling out and what are we not calling out? What are we emphasizing and what we're not emphasizing? Because if we're going to talk about gender, then I say let's talk about sexual orientation. Let's start listing and come up with a list as long as it can be. But let us be very careful about when we are talking, because as we all know, who benefited from affirmative action, right? In practice, who benefited from affirmative action? So there is historical information, there is data out there. It's just that we need to go back and read and review. We don't need any more studies. You know, we probably need to update numbers and stuff like that. But there is data out there as to why we center race.
Just in case the group doesn't have the same context and data that you have, Lorraine, historically, white women have benefited from affirmative action. Period.
Karen.
I think that is a great segue to look at how we put our principles into action. If the group is okay with moving on, that's
Sounds good. Thank you, Karen.
yeah.
And so again, the very short, bold version of these are the ones that you hear at the beginning of each of our meetings.
All right, so we have reviewed our bylaws as well as our current stated principles. Are there any edits that we would like to do before we motion to approve these? And always keep in mind, these are living documents, and so we have the capacity to edit them along the way. So I'm gonna let Karen speak before we start.
So I was struck, something you said, Kyle, resonated with me, and that was when you said something like, before we make a decision or before we come to some, transition point or something, that we, and Joanne, you said, or I heard a similar sentiment that you expressed, but at some point we pause and ask, how is race showing up here? Or, um, essentially, have we followed an equitable process to get to this decision that we're about to make? That there's actually a deliberate stop and inquiry and pause. And so that struck me. I think that's important, and that's something that I would like to see us as a board do more actively, more deliberately. And where that might show up in this document, again, maybe we don't need to add, we don't have to write everything down. So maybe we don't have to put it in this document, but just as sort of an accountability for ourselves. I wonder if in this section that is indeed entitled How We Put Our Principles into Action, perhaps there is a bulletin point or something just about either I don't know, either continually is something that helps us holds us accountable to these statements, right? There's something very deliberate that we incorporate into our practices, whether that be, ongoing and annual training that we incorporate into our work plan, which I think is a great idea for internal, work plan for internal business. So maybe there's a bullet that just talks about we put these into action by, continually seeking, different, I don't know, different perspectives, continually seeking to be educated, continually challenging ourselves to, not succumb to urgency and making quick decisions and, so-called efficiency, but taking the time to really inquire about the, again, the how we got to a certain point, and have we done that in a way that is truly in alignment with these principles. So to me, I don't see that in this document, that there's, it's kind of like it is holding, by saying that we abide by these principles and we hold ourselves accountable to these principles, but it's almost, what is that like? It's almost like the, what's it called? The wolf guarding the chickens or something. We're sort of the judge. Are we holding ourselves accountable to these principles? Well, yeah, we think we are, but yeah. That's kind of, sometimes that's just kind of easy, right? To make the statement. Yeah, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
No, with that in mind, because we have only 5 minutes left, and I think what you just said is very poignant. And I don't think we should rush to adopting them. And I think some of the language you had there, I think I could draft something and work on some language to send out to PUB members between now and the next meeting, and hold to do the final review for what that could look like at the intro to this section, that would capture some of that, deliberately and continually holding us accountable by, and some of that language that you had, if there's general agreement from folks. Oh, look, it raised my hand. I didn't think I could raise my hand. I thought as a host it didn't work. That's exciting to see. Sorry. That I'm wondering if maybe between now and the next meeting that we could draft some of that language, if folks are supportive of that, and see how we could work that more active piece into this part of the document, and then revisit that at the beginning of the next meeting. Does that sound agreeable to folks?
Certainly sounds agreeable to me, and I'm sorry I was not paying attention to the time. I should have.
No,
more kind of there.
I think your point was exactly that, we shouldn't rush to a decision and that we should take the time to make sure that we're asking ourselves that question, right? And making sure that we're doing that important piece and asking the right question. So I think this is exactly that right time to ask that question. So, all right, I saw some thumbs up, so I'm going to draft some language. I will touch base with you, Karen, to make sure that I accurately capture some of what you were proposing. And then I will send it out to the rest of the group for some feedback prior to, as read ahead prior to the next meeting. Let me get back to our final screens. Am I back on the slideshow? I can't tell. Are you guys seeing the slides?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. Okay, so since we're in the final moments, let me just do some final announcements, if that sounds good, since we don't have time for the other conversation. So just wanted to highlight that as of July 1st, with the charter transition changes, that changes some of the reporting structures. I'll send out some of the announcement information that we received. As was noted in some of the prior information that went out, the deputy city administrator who is responsible over the utility bureaus, I hope to coordinate with them, with Priya. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but hopefully we will be able to have them at one of our future meetings. But they just started this week, so we will be working to try to coordinate that at a future meeting. The Administrative Review Committee, just got some volunteers for the August and September, so thank you to those of you who volunteered for that. We do have one just next week on July 9th. So if anybody is available for that one, please let me know. Still seeking volunteers for that date. So usually they're in the morning, and let me know if you're available for that. I did just send out this morning an email that came from the charter transition staff about the survey where they are seeking some feedback from all advisory body members for some feedback on what you'd like for their engagement officer, and would love to see all of you participate in that. I think your feedback would be really valuable. So you have some time to complete that survey. So just sometime over the next 5-6 weeks, make sure that you take a look at that email, complete the survey, and I will be getting a doodle pull out about field trip scheduling. I know that we have a lot of folks traveling, so I've talked with some of you about some of your schedules and availability. So I'm trying to work around some of that and figure out when we might be able to schedule something, but I will be in touch with you all soon. Are any other announcements from the group or good of the order before we talk about next meeting?
Just wanted to clarify. I know that all of the bureau, like we used to report to Mingus Maps, but I believe that the mayor now holds the reins of all the bureaus. Am I to understand that Priya is going to be our point of contact, not necessarily the mayor?
So I don't know exactly how everything falls. So because we are so pub, like I am under the city budget office. And so we report through the mayor's office, and through the city administrator and whoever those lines of command are. The Priya oversees the public works bureaus that pub is responsible for. So likely is the primary liaison to the pub. So I think probably is the main point in the same way that Commissioner Maps was. So just like the mayor has been over the city budget office, technically the entire time. Really, we've primarily worked with Commissioner Maps for your work, and with Jack as the staff in the past. My guess is you'll primarily work with Priya in the future, and whatever staff works with Priya. So, but that remains to be seen, because really until she's been on staff and gets settled and is pretty busy this week, there's probably a lot of priorities on her to-do list. But on that list has been a request through commissioner's staff, just that Pub is interested in having connection with her and trying to, have her connect at one of your meetings. So it's on the list, but I'm not sure when it will happen. So we'll see. So I'm working on it. And I'm not positive what our agenda items are for upcoming meetings. We do have a lot of pending items in the future. We still have budget stuff to come back to, have field trip. We still have natural resource work that will continue to move forward. We have rate study implementation and work that will come back later in August and September, and then other work that will continue to happen. So we are working on leadership team meeting. We'll be strategizing a little bit about work plan stuff. And so we'll be working on what the priorities are for the upcoming meetings. But if there are any immediate priorities for any of you, certainly give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever works for you, and keep me in the loop. Yeah. Otherwise, I think that's it on my end.
All right, so with that, everyone, the next meeting we have is July 18th at 11 a.m. And we've got the contact information on the screen if anyone needs to read previous documents or submit public comment. But other than that, thank you all for attending, and meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank
Nice meeting
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the discussion.